Nomad families first appeared in 1993 in reaction to escalating violence. Groups of displaced people formed protective alliances. By 1996, the number of homeless had jumped to 80 million, making nomads ubiquitous. The first recorded nomad incident involving gang harassment was a nomad group of displaced migrant laborers that later developed into the Aldecaldo family in south-central Los Angeles. Group leader Juan Aldecaldo openly pleaded for government assistance. When he was ignored, he reacted by insulting the president's maternal heritage on national television. Similar public incidents would also occur in Atlanta and Chicago shortly before the collapse. Some nomad groups tried to take over cities and military facilities. Most of these were eliminated in bloody clashes with whatever authority existed to deal with them. 60 million died before the military could regain control in 2004. Violence, starvation, and plague. It was a crisis that the military saw coming, yet they just didn't have the resources to deal with the multiplicity of problems. One of the most futile efforts of the military government was the Emergency Welfare Relocation Program. To receive aid from the government, referred to as a cotton kibble, displaced persons were required to move to training areas. Many of the disenfranchised went to these areas expecting help. It soon became apparent that the government did not have the necessary resources to support the program, and people died in droves in the camps. By mid-1997, the camps had been hit by widespread revolt, as well as outbreaks of AIDS, typhoid, and starvation. By the end of 1998, another 10 million had died. In that same year, a massive earthquake struck Los Angeles and crippled the military's hold on the region. The government did not even have the manpower to bury the dead or repair the statewide damage, and was forced to hire outside labor. The Jodes, a powerful nomad group from Oklahoma, successfully negotiated a manpower contract with the military of California over huge protests from the regionally native Aldecaldo family. Harassment by the Aldecaldos led to open skirmishes between the two families. The Jodes remained in the LA area until 2001. With their contract successfully completed, they established the idea of a competitive nomad economy, with groups bartering their services all over the Americas. As many as 70% of all nomads are zeros. Without citizen status, there is no way for them to be taxed. The corporations, however, often need a large group of cheap, semi-skilled labor to help in its own agendas. Whole cities have been abandoned or wrecked, and millions of acres of land must be reclaimed. The corporations know that hiring local labor would weigh them down, so it is much cheaper to hire nomads. Another strong point was the time factor. The nomads, they have no illusions of corporate retirement centers or yearly pay increases. As a matter of fact, most nomads are paid in kind. Goods and services are traded for labor. Almost no cash changes hands. Even the government had to use nomad groups after they realized that committing too many troops in the South Am would cause a loss of control in America. After the government had admitted defeat in the war, no one knew what to do. Not only was the government strapped for cash at home, they now had to transport almost 1 million people back to the United States. Most of these people were nomads. The government wasn't happy about hiring nomad labor for the war in the first place. They were also opposed to the expense of bringing them home. Almost 500,000 American nomads were simply marooned in the South Am. What was called the Long Walk had begun. From Panama City to the Rio Grande, They walked, or rode, or drove, stealing and pillaging their way through Central America and Mexico. It may have started as an orderly military retreat. It ended, however, as a starved and angry mob. At the end of their journey, there were only about 60,000 people left. While I have covered the nomad nations previously, there are various nomad families that, while much smaller in terms of influence, are still notable. Gregory Caspia was the commander of the Fort Ord Army base in Monterey County when the collapse hit. The Bayside communities were hit hard, and there was rioting in the streets in Monterey itself, and the entire town of Santa Cruz was nearly wiped out by spreading fires. Caspia was trying to cope with both disasters when the orders came that he was to pull his forces back to protect the small community of Carmel, which had been stocking food and supplies gathered from the surrounding county. As always, the rich were trying to protect themselves at the cost of the poor. Caspia had always been a good soldier, but this was simply too much. His men had families in the nearby communities, and he simply couldn't leave them to die. He ordered his men to continue their efforts and offered the mayor of Carmel a choice: either help with the relief effort or try to make it on their own. The mayor declined, and the army pulled out of the Carmel area. Caspia was declared a traitor, and a reward was offered for his death. This was broadcast to his men in the hopes that they would turn against him. They did not. Caspia pulled his men and vehicles out of the base and welcomed any civilian that wished to join the caravan. As the former soldiers left the county, the first military-based nomad pack was born. The Maxes. Originally a rampaging go gang without a purpose, the Maxes entered their current phase when their leader discovered an abandoned vid store and a complete collection of Mad Max tapes. With a guiding spirit to center them, the Maxes became a rampaging go gang of posers determined to recreate all the best parts of the most popular post-Holocaust movie series. This meant wrist crossbows, wild mohawks, leather hockey masks, and other trappings. The Maxes are driven to mimic the Road Warrior movies in other ways. Since the Mel Gibson character was a hero, the Maxes consider themselves heroes too, and will occasionally descend on a town best by other go gangs to wipe the attackers out. They will also befriend any group of children they encounter. Unsurprisingly, the lead is biosculpted to resemble Mel Gibson, while the second in command looks like Tina Turner. The technical circuits. The cyberpunk world is held together by a vast web of electronic computer systems, cybernetic enhancement, and high-tech hardware. But what happens when the techs that hold this all together go rogue? They run away to the circuits. The technical circuits are a roving band of technicians, specializing in almost every type of hardware or software imaginable, traveling from place to place, dispensing high-tech solutions to insolvable problems. The original founders of the circuits were a group of EBM techs who attempted to start their own small consulting firm in violation of their lifetime contracts. A preemptive strike by EBM enforcement teams decimated almost half the firm in its first week of operations. The remaining members fled into the desert and hid themselves among the nomad packs there. Over time, other renegades joined this core group until it expanded to its current membership. The kids. Imagine almost 1,000 screaming cyberpunk teenagers packed into a horde of mini bikes. The original core of this pack is derived from a group which broke out of the Nevada State Juvenile Reclamation Authority in 2018. Captain Cody and the Aero Pirates. When the aircraft of the 1990s ran into the fuel crunch of the early 2000s, there was a major shift in the style of air transportation over the US. One of the most notable changes was the rebirth of the light-of-an-air vehicle, with the advanced fly-by-wire computers and super alloys of the cyberpunk age. these massive airships once again became a common sight. But unlike your average jumbo jet, these slow-moving skyships were far easier to overtake and hijack. Soon, roving bands of AV rotorcraft and light VTOL aircraft began to engage in commerce raiding on a scale reminiscent of the pirates of old. Sweeping in from the cloud cover, these modern-day buccaneers tripped away cargoes, took hostages, and occasionally even commandeered entire airships. One of the most notorious of these aeronautical privateers is Captain Cody and the extended family, known as his Aero Pirates. The party, originally organized by 20 die-hard samurai fans who caravanned to the last Silverhand Eurodyne concert in 2010. The party turned out to be such a success that it has continued ever since. The current incarnation follows no set path, but veers wildly from city to city as the mood strikes. As most of the partiers come from extremely wealthy backgrounds, the party's resource level is subject to whim, and the tone can shift from techno-pop rave to virtual power party in moments. Drugs, synth, sex, and mega violence are always a staple, but whatever's in fashion now will also be provided. The digital librarians, so that knowledge will not perish from the earth. In a nutshell, that describes the digital librarians, a loose family pack of university professors, librarians, and collectors who roam the badlands of the balkanized US. The librarians' mission is simple: collect and store copies of every single record, book, tape, compact disc, data chip, and video produced, and store it in the massive computer bank of their central library. The head librarian is University of Free California, Berkeley professor John Roger Mortensen, who deserted the campus in 2011.